So maybe we touched briefly on this. Let's do it slightly out of order. Laura, you mentioned kind of capacity planning for your team, for yourself. You know, how do you, or historically maybe over the course of your career, how have you kind of seen that change, if at all?
Okay, well, we moved away from the traditional partner and the partner's associate concept that everybody who's ever worked private practice probably is familiar with. And we didn't really want to work like that, because a combination of the type of team that we had lots of female people. We were sort of just outside London. There was a high volume of females, high volume of sort of part-time people, lots of ex sort of London people coming for work-life balance, that kind of stuff. So we had this mixture of a team that we knew we needed to be quite flexible with, and not that kind of traditional structure. And so it started from there, really, and it became that we had all this information in our head about what people's learning needs were, what kind of jobs they needed to do, how much capacity they had, this and that and the other. And the more we were trying to struggle with remembering all those different things to be able to allocate work, so we funneled the work through two key partners or managers in a team, and that was taking up a lot of our time. So I kind of started thinking about the roles that I kind of heard about in London, where people were sort of using project management tools to help delegate work and keep hold of capacity, etc. So starting to use within our collaboration platform like a tasking module where you could set it up with people and the tasks, and it monitor where you're at with certain people so that you know where you are. And really, I think there's a lot more that I could do on that side. It's just that I've got very little help with that. So it's something that we have to do ourselves, but I can really, really see being able to create something more where people send, a bit like when they send dictations to something, you could have it like that, where they send jobs and the jobs go to the list that could accumulate the list, and it could have things like it ticks boxes for certain sector practice knowledge, things like that. So you know, if you were looking to do, if you had an objective that required a certain area of specialism or something, you could have those things listed, and then it almost not, I don't know if it makes it available to the feelers and then they select it. I don't know if that would exactly work, but there's something about that quite appeals to me, because I think we spend a lot of time allocating and trying to make it all perfect, or might all happen much easier if you kind of give that freedom to people. Yeah, so I'm on the lookout for making something like that something a bit bespoke out of a product like that, so that we can help us with our day-to-day team management.
I certainly approve strongly of the idea of it, rather than capacity management being something that is imposed on people, certainly individual lawyers.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I think a lot of them feel overwhelmed, whether you're whatever sort of business you're in, is it's not nuanced enough sometimes. But I know, Radhika, you and I have spoken. You've got a kind of a range of, well, you've got some kind of old school stuff, I guess, but also you're using it in a relatively modern way with and also your micro rotations thing. Maybe do you want to touch on both of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of the old school one, I mean, it's pretty obvious, like what you can expect. We have internal reporting where I think, Larry, it's the list sort of element that you kind of mentioned there. We work really closely with our clients, right? For us as our own internal clients, and we have very strong relationships with them. We attend their weekly meetings, for example, not least to know what is the workload coming in, but also, in fact, just to be better lawyers, because it allows us to understand what the pain points are of the business and what might be upcoming that we need to think about, because we'd also like to understand what the strategic avenues are and what challenges might be and what areas of improvements might be, whether that be in the business internally or externally. So that's sort of that old school element of engaging with the business, and everyone has a vested interest in actually doing it. So there's no sort of unlike private practice, I suppose, this is, everyone is so heavily vested because we sort of, do consider ourselves very close business advisors. But in terms of beyond that and sort of something new that we have deployed, it's a concept called micro rotations, where we basically use a tool where you online have a list of potential jobs and tasks that are available globally around the world. And it's sort of in a list format, and it gives you an idea of how many hours it's anticipated or envisaged to take and how many people are required for it. And it's a very easy collaborative tool which allows people to not only or team members to actually focus on their data capacity planning and sort of use resources outside of their immediate team, but also it allows people to think outside the box. It gives them the opportunity to do something that maybe it's not their day-to-day job, but it's something they've always been interested in. For example, IP research on a case or on a particular topic, or pro bono, or an idea for a hackathon. I mean, it could be absolutely anything that we put into this portal. And that's been very successful within the business. And in fact, that has actually led sometimes to even secondments, short-term secondments for teams. So not only is it a very, very good tool to sort of have a data-driven capacity planning sort of aspect to it, where folks can see how much workload is available, but also it allows upskilling, and it allows collaboration, and it brings in the fun of working with different people. So that's what I would say it
sounds brilliant. That's exactly what I kind of think that I would like. Who decides which tasks go in it, and how do you make that decision as to when do you say, oh no, this task is just not suitable for that? Or because it sounds like it's not every task, it's particular tasks. Is that right?
It's particular task. It's not every task. And you would decide, people are given the liberty to sort of decide what they need to put in there. The folks who would use it are sort of more senior lawyers in our team, especially from the legal department who do utilize it. So no one needs sort of hand holding. Everyone's sort of allowed to put sort of whatever they need on there. So there's less management that's involved, which is quite good because it's a very self-sufficient tool.
I think I'm going to take that idea.
I love it though, because it is a sort of a source of engagement, isn't it? It's far from being, Struth, I've got another 6 jobs on my list. It's actually now I can go and try something, and it's a bit of personal development, it's a bit of team development. I love that.
Absolutely.
Maybe just to give a quick view and to ground perhaps this capacity management is something that, of course, as part of our managed service, we need to look at very carefully, because it's important to part of the AI plus. The plus is looking after the people internally here. To get just a concrete example, we've actually moved away as a team. I've lost my lights. We've moved away as a team from Outlook, and now we use an email application called Front, which you may or may not be aware of. I think they are, let's call them a scale up rather than a startup. But what they've done is they've created a kind of an email client that works really well with different specific client inboxes in a shared fashion. So rather than having your one Outlook account, which all your emails come into, for individual clients, they'll go into separate things. But in addition to that, they've built in all sorts of metrics and tracking and that kind of thing. So there are elements of it that are definitely quite big brother, and you want to be careful with that, particularly managing a team. But there are some also really useful things. You can see, for example, if somebody's getting completely overwhelmed because they've been sending, they sent 58 emails yesterday morning, clearly that person needs some help. And similarly, somebody may be bored to tears, they've only sent 3 emails in the last month. So that kind of thing, I think there are products and solutions that are kind of coming out that tackle similar problems, or they do similar things, but with another layer of they've actually just thought about how people interact, whether they're working remotely or whatever. It just works quite nicely.